Are you on the path you want to be on? For me, in this episode, you're going to see how I shared how the path that I was on turned out wasn't the path that I wanted to be on, and how I was able to think differently about creating my own inflection point to change the trajectory of my path. So I did the right thing, right? I found another job that I'll tell you about in a second, and I went and I sort of did the thing that I was going to do. I was like, Mike, listen, it's been fun. And I said, listen, I found another job. I'm going to leave. Thanks for the experience. I appreciate it. And Mike barely took his fingers off the keyboard and looked up at me. He said, it's a good thing you quit, because if you hadn't, I was going to fire you on Monday. Oh, God. When I often share the experience of creating something with other people, they ask me what inspired me to do it. And for me, I look back to a time in my life when I found myself on a path that was promising, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so in this speech that I gave, I talked a lot about that moment when I looked at my own path, saw where I was headed, and realized, is there a way for me to create my own inflection point? And that's what I think all of us can do, is to be thoughtful about where we are, not only where we're headed, but are there things that we can do to change our trajectory, to create that inflection point to take us where we want to go? And oftentimes that may mean we need to invest differently, to think differently, and do something that allows us to create our own inflection point. All right, so let me give you my introduction. So what I did for you also, to give you a sense of it, is this graph underneath here is my own personal trajectory. That's kind of what it is. So this is where I saw myself headed. So as I told you, I went to Marquette University, another fine Jesuit school, but I was not as smart as you all people. I would not have gotten into you all's school as well. But I was still very ambitious, right? I wanted to have these big potentials. So when I graduated college, I said, my goal is to become a CEO at a Fortune 500 company. I don't know exactly why I wanted to do that, but that was my goal. So let me have my goal. And so I did what most people did. I took the most prestigious job I could get out of college. I worked at Morgan Stanley. That was my job. And so I thought, this is perfect, like it's finance, it's marketing, it's gonna be great. It was the worst fucking job ever. It was awful. So I'll tell you what I did. I was told I was going to be helping in high finance. I was really a glorified cold caller. So I had a target every day. Anyone ever done this? Like, I had 120 dials that I had to do per day. It was awesome. And it was so terrible, I was so bad at it and hated it so much that I had this like habit that I would do is, I had my call list, I'd be calling, and I had a pencil and I had a red pen. And with the red pen, I would basically, or with the pencil I'd cross off names that I said no. With the red pen, I would make a little dot next to it. The ones that I had dots next to were ones that were numbers that had been disconnected. And the reason I made the dot is because the next day I would call them back so I could get myself another 20 automatic dials that wouldn't answer. That was how awful it was, right? And so I didn't last very long. I made it about 9 months. I can't believe I made it that long. And I had the worst asshole boss you could ever imagine, this guy named Mike. Like, Mike is basically like high Wall Street finance personified. He was a dick, right? I'll be honest. And not that I wouldn't lie to you, but he was a dick. And so, listen, we knew it wasn't a fit, I wasn't gonna do it, and so I did the right thing, right? I found another job that I'll tell you about in a second, and I went and I sort of did the thing that I was gonna do. I was like, Mike, listen, it's been fun. And I said, listen, I found another job, I'm gonna leave, thanks for the experience, I appreciate it. And Mike barely took his fingers off the keyboard and looked up at me. He said, it's a good thing you quit, because if you hadn't, I was gonna fire you on Monday. Oh, God, like, and that's true, a real thing. So, see this whole like line here that I talk about the trajectory? You see why it went down a little bit? Yeah, that's sort of what happened right there. So that was my first job. Anyone have a first job experience feel similar at all? Not as bad, but similar, I hope? I hope it wasn't as bad for you. So after that one, I did have a much better next job. My next job was at Ventana Medical Systems, which was a biotech company based in Arizona. Great bosses, 2 great mentors. I rode the company from a small company all the way until it was sold for $2.4 billion. Awesome, learned a ton. And then I did what everyone does when they're sort of at that point. I'm like mid-20s. Any guesses of what I did next? What do I do at this point? Grad school, that's right, exactly. Grad school is my next thing. So I went out and took the LSAT and the GMAT because I was like, I don't know, maybe one of the two. And so I decided to go to law school on one reason. I had done the math and I saw there was more Fortune 500 CEOs that were lawyers than were MBAs. That was my logic. I actually scored worse on the GMAT, or on the LSAT than on the GMAT, which is sort of stupid in my case. But I got into GW. Oops, I got into GW. Fine law school, not the best law school, right? It's okay. I was, again, very thankful that they let me in. And I learned a lot. Again, I realized at that point I needed to go work for a bit. So I took a job at the most prestigious place I could get, which was cool. Sorry, who's from the law firm here? feel like I'm cheating on my wife. Okay. All right. So I took a job at Cooley, and it was a very, a great law firm. I was very excited about the opportunity, and I was doing my thing, and I loved it. I was enjoying myself right there. But I thought at that point, I looked at myself and I was like, all right, I mean, I can keep doing this. I was billing like about 2,600 to 2,800 hours a year, so I was like busy. But I didn't see myself like changing. Like, this is my path. I was on this path for a long time. I thought like, what's next for me? So at 5 years in, I basically said like, what the hell am I doing? So something happened though, right? My path actually didn't do this one. And again, this isn't about necessarily the path per se, but it's my perception of my path, what I saw. I had my own sort of inflection point that we'll talk a little more about. And something remarkable happened to me. So number one, I got hired at one of the fastest growing startups in Seattle, which is very unusual. Like, they don't usually hire lawyers. Like, they hate lawyers, but like, they hired me to be their COO. Eventually we got acquired. And so that was my first sort of real startup experience. From there, I founded my next company, my first company actually, my first big company, which we called Zarly. My first investor at that company was actually Ashton Kutcher. Afterwards, I can tell you some really funny stories, interesting stories too. So I got to see the middle of the divorce between Demi and Ashton. It was awesome. And so Zarly was named one of the 50 most innovative companies in the world. We raised $50 million, still going, a company that exists today. But I got to co-found that company, and that was amazing. From there, I basically had a bunch of really interesting experiences that I'm surprised happened to me. I started my own venture capital firm. That's cool. I started another company. I got asked to teach at Georgetown, which is weird to me. I became on the board of Startup Weekend. Today I run something called Creator Institute in addition, which is sort of in addition to what I do today at Georgetown. But if you're looking at this list, as I would be, you gotta be wondering like, what the hell happened here, right? Like, what is this thing that causes inflection point to me? And I would tell you for the longest time, I believed this was sort of luck. The things that happened to me were sort of lucky. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that one. So 2 things happened to me in a 9-month period. Number 1, I published a book. It wasn't a particularly good book. It wasn't a particularly popular book. In fact, I only made less than $1,000 on the book. It took me more than 1,000 hours, so you can do the math on that one. It was not a good use of my time on that regard, but I did. I finished a book. The second thing I did is I went to a hackathon and I worked on a little project with some people for the weekend, and I built an app with some people. I learned how to code, built an app. Eventually, like, it became a little bit popular. It sort of blew up, and it got acquired by BlackBerry. These 2 things happened to me. Now again, I looked at them and thought, I got pretty lucky. These are my sorts of things right here. Like, luck just happened to me. Good for me. Happy, happy, happy. The reality is though, what I will tell you and we'll talk more about tonight is I learned that this is actually something systematic that's going on that nobody realizes and no one's seen. We realized that this thing that happened to me is what's called a creation event. This is basically something that the most successful people today have, which is basically an architected inflection point. Now, this is the thing that we saw when we studied the Forbes 30 to 30 that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. 85% of them had their version of a creation event. I'm going to tell you more about it today, a little bit about it, and it's something that you all may have the opportunity to participate in as well. But this is the powerful thing that's happening today.